You know that feeling of just being totally overwhelmed by all the information out there? I mean, you're constantly bombarded with competing theories, bits and pieces of data, and endless arguments about what reality even is. It's so easy to get lost in all that noise. But what if I told you there's an ancient framework that offers a single, incredibly elegant answer to, well, everything?
We're so used to thinking in opposites, right? You've got mind versus matter, body versus soul. It's all about these divisions. Well, today we're going to dive into a totally different idea, one from ancient Chinese philosophy. It's this profound concept that sees everything, and I mean everything, from a star burning millions of miles away to a thought inside your head as just part of one single unified process. A reality where, at the most basic level, those divisions we're so used to, they just disappear.
All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to unpack what this process actually is, break down its 3 fundamental rules, clear up some really common mix-ups, and then see how surprisingly relevant it is today, everywhere from medicine to cutting-edge physics. Let's dive in.
Okay, so here's the first big shift in thinking. Instead of asking the usual question, what is the universe made of, this framework flips it. It asks, how does the universe operate? And the answer it gives is pretty mind-blowing. Everything we see, feel, and think is just part of one single, dynamic, unfolding process.
And that process has a name, qi. Now let's get one thing straight right away, because this is super important. Qi is not energy, or some kind of mystical substance you can measure. Think of it as the very principle of change itself. It's the verb, not the noun. It's the constant becoming that happens before we can even start talking about things like matter or spirit. Okay, so if you accept that premise, that the whole universe is one continuous process, then it follows that some basic truths have to just emerge from it. They're not rules that are forced on it from the outside. Nope, they're just what happens naturally when this single process is left to do its thing.
And ancient thinkers zeroed in on 3 of these inescapable truths. You can almost think of them as the operating system for qi. So let's break them down one by one. First up, we have the dance between void and substance. What does that mean? Well, it means nothing is ever permanently solid, and nothing is ever permanently empty. Qi is in this constant state of gathering together to become what we see and touch, that's substance, and then scattering back out into formless potential, that's void. It's like a cosmic breath, you know, in and out. Anything that seems solid is really just a temporary pattern in that flow.
Okay, the second truth is called induction, and this one is huge. Since everything is part of the same single process, nothing exists all by itself. A change in one spot creates an instant ripple, a resonance, across the entire system. And it's really important to get this. This is not a simple cause and effect chain, where A bumps into B, which then bumps into C. It's much more like a spider web. You pluck one single thread over here, and the whole web vibrates instantly. It's all about this deep, profound, universal connection.
And number 3 is the entropy trend. This is going to sound familiar. The idea is that any ordered system, if you just leave it alone, will naturally drift towards disorder and break apart. And here's the kicker. This ancient concept is a dead ringer for the second law of thermodynamics. It's amazing. So from this point of view, life, all life, is this beautiful, heroic, but temporary struggle. It's a constant, active resistance against that universal pull towards chaos.
All right, now let's talk about concepts you've probably heard of, like yin and yang, or the 5 elements. The thing is, they are almost always misunderstood in the West. It turns out they aren't what most people think they are. They're not these fundamental forces battling it out, but something, well, something much more clever.
Yeah, what's so interesting is that the original texts are super clear on this. These concepts are not basic realities. They're methodological tools. They're brilliant symbolic maps that were created to help us understand and describe the behavior of qi. And you know the old saying, don't confuse the map with the territory? Well, that's exactly where so many misunderstandings come from.
So let's take yin and yang. They're not 2 forces fighting each other. Not at all. They're simply symbols for qi's 2 basic tendencies, gathering and scattering. That's it. Same with the 5 elements. We're not talking about literal wood, fire, and water. No, they're a map of 5 different functional phases of qi's process. Things like rising up, expanding outwards, or consolidating inwards. They're like labels for the different moves in a dance. They're not the dancers themselves. Okay,
So I know this might all sound pretty philosophical and abstract, but believe me, this framework has some incredibly practical applications, and it has some absolutely stunning parallels in modern science. This is where it gets really cool. Take traditional Chinese medicine. When you really get down to it, it's just the practical application of these 3 rules to the human body. Diagnosis? That's all about finding imbalances of void and substance. Is there too much gathering here, not enough there? Treatment? Things like acupuncture? That's using the principle of induction to restore that holistic connection and get things flowing right. And the whole goal? It's to help the body fight back against that entropy trend, to maintain that fragile, precious state of order that we call being healthy. And this is where things get truly mind-bending. Just look at how these ancient ideas resonate today. The principle of induction, that idea of instant, holistic connection across a whole system, well, it sounds an awful lot like quantum entanglement, doesn't it? Where 2 particles can be connected instantly, no matter how far apart they are. And, like we said before, the entropy trend is basically a 2,000-year-old description of the second law of thermodynamics, which is one of the absolute cornerstones of modern physics. It's just wild.
So if you take away just one thing, let it be this. The universe isn't a museum full of static, separate things. It's a story. It's a single, dynamic, deeply interconnected process of unfolding and becoming. And we're not just watching from the sidelines. We are active, participating parts of that very flow.
I mean, that's a pretty powerful way to look at things, isn't it? So I'll leave you with this question. If everything, your body, your thoughts, the stars in the sky, is just a temporary pattern in one single continuous dance, how does that change the way you see yourself and your place in this incredible cosmos?